Assalamu alaikum. In today's video, I'll be refuting the underlying logic of universal common ancestry. This is a really important video. Let's get started. So here's the basic logic of universal common ancestry. The basic logic of all of the arguments for universal common ancestry is that similarity equals common descent, or that similarity is due to common descent. Firstly, this is circular reasoning. Moreover, there are an absolutely massive amount of similarities in living things that cannot possibly be due to common descent, even according to mainstream evolutionary biologists. So this assumption is proven false again and again. The logic is falsified again and again, and this is not something controversial. This is just belief based on blind faith. Now, first I'll give a reference regarding my claim that the logic is basically similarity equals common descent. Now, a lot of the atheists will try to lie about this. Even evolutionary biologists will try to lie about this, that this is not the case. But here's just one reference proving that this is the case. Molecular systematics. Systematics is basically the science of how uh, how different species are related, and it's related to the tree of life, right? Molecular systematics is largely based on the assumption, first clearly articulated by Zucker, Candle, and Pauling, that degree of overall similarity reflects degree of relatedness. So this is a mainstream evolutionary biology paper from mainstream evolutionary biologists who are saying the same thing that we say, that this is just the assumption is similarities are due to common descent. Now, again, main problem for this is there is an absolutely massive amount of similarities in living things that cannot possibly be due to common descent. And I'll just give two references for this. One is Simon Conway Morris's book Life Solutions, and another is this book, Convergent Evolution. Again, these give numerous examples of cases of convergent evolution or similarities that are not due to common descent. Conway Morris goes as far as to say that convergence is ubiquitous, meaning it is extremely widespread and present throughout life. Similarities that are not due to common descent. So the basic logic has to be false. So here's the basic argument and why this is circular reasoning. Premise 1, similarities are due to common descent. Premise 2, similarities exist. Conclusion, therefore, these similarities are due to common descent. Unless premise 1 is argued for, this is a circular argument. There is simply no way around this. But here's the problem. In our case, the premise is false. Why? Because of numerous similarities that are not due to common descent, even according to mainstream evolutionary biologists. Now, there's another way that atheists will try to argue this point. They won't try to argue it necessarily like this, like in a deductive form. They will try to make this point as an inference to the best explanation. For instance, they will say there are different explanations for these similarities, and the best one is common descent. I'll just give a refutation of that type of argumentation as well. There are at least four possible explanations for the massive amount of similarities in living things: common descent, common design, physical necessity or some physical process that causes this, or chance. These are four possible explanations. The atheists will try to claim that common descent is the best/correct explanation, but to do this, they either have to show common descent is correct or that other explanations are wrong. Now, usually, the again, I don't think they have any way to prove common descent is correct, so they will try to make one type of argumentation. They will try to claim that common descent is a simpler explanation due to common design, and that chance is implausible, and they will assume necessity is impossible as well. But their fundamental claim that common descent is simpler explanation than common design is not true. Yeah, it's surprising, but it's not true. Here's what simplicity means in this regard. Simplicity, in terms of Occam's razor, means that multiple explanations for a phenomena should not be invoked if a single explanation will work. Now, before I go into this and why there is a massive problem for atheists here, before we get into this, keep this in mind. Simplicity matters if all else is equal. Occam's razor is that simplicity matters if all else is equal, and if basically all else is equal, the simpler explanation is correct. Occam's razor is not that the simpler explanation is always correct. That's not what Occam's razor is. Keep this in mind, and this is something atheists try to like They try to assert this without justifying it. Now let's get into Occam's razor and why common design is actually a simpler explanation than common descent. By their own admission, there are some similarities that can be explained by common descent and some that cannot possibly be explained due to common descent. So, if common descent is true, then those other similarities that are not due to common descent have to be explained by either chance, necessity, or common design. So, there are two explanations involved. If chance, necessity, or common design are true, each of those by themselves can explain all of the similarities. So, all of them, whether correct or not, are by default simpler than common descent. And this might seem weird to you, but common design, according to this version of Occam's razor, is simpler than common descent. Why? And there's a very simple reason. Common design can explain those similarities that evolutionary biologists claim are due to common descent and those similarities evolutionary biologists claim that are not due to common descent. Common design can explain both those similarities. Common descent can't. Common descent can only explain one of those similarities, so it's basically invoking more explanation. So, by this definition of Occam's razor, common design has to be simpler than common descent. There's another definition of simplicity that atheists will try to take. Basically, this definition says that the fewer number of things are involved, the simpler the explanation. What they mean by this is that common design has an common descent has all the living things, like all the biological life. Common design has an extra entity in the form of God, right? An extra entity, supernatural creator. On this definition of Occam's razor, common descent is simpler than common design. But even if we take this explanation, there's a problem for atheists. There's a problem even on this definition. If common descent is true, then there are an absolutely massive amount intermediate fossils that there is no fossil evidence of. Like there have to be innumerable fossils that there is absolutely no evidence of. And the funny thing is, even on this definition, common design is simpler than common descent, as one intelligent designer is simpler compared to innumerable transitional fossils. So keep this in mind. There's another definition of Occam's razor that's actually not a real definition, but atheists will try to take in this regard. They will say that because no supernatural entity is involved, and so basically common descent is simpler. And to be honest, that's just like they are just assuming, trying to force God or an intelligent designer out of the explanation. We don't need to take it. We can take these two common definitions of Occam's razor, which they usually employ, and on both of these, common design is simpler than common descent. By the way, just to give one reference regarding the extreme lack of fossil intermediates or intermediate fossils, this is from Stephen Jay Gould. The absence of fossil evidence for intermediary stages between major transitions in organic design, indeed, our inability, even in our imagination, to construct functional intermediates in many cases has been a persistent and nagging problem for gradualistic accounts of evolution. So again, I can give dozens and dozens of references regarding the absence of transitional fossils. I'm not making that up, and I have a video on the fossil record as well. Now, more than this, there's an even bigger problem here. Trees of life can be derived based on both the similarities in genetics and similarities in anatomy. Genetics, genes, again, I've explained what that is in earlier videos. Similarities in anatomy, basically type of body, like bones, organs, etc., all those things, right? That's what anatomy means. If these two similarities give similar trees, right, then that is something can be used as an evidence for evolution, that can be used by evolutionists as evidence for universal common ancestry. But if these give different trees, then that is a massive argument against evolution. They actually give different trees. And just to prove that I'm not making this test for evolution of myself, I'll give a reference from evolutionary biologists Zucker, Landell, and Pauling, who basically hypothesized this point. And here's the reference. In the 1960s, around the time the genetic code was first understood, biochemists Emil Zuckerkandl and Linus Pauling hypothesized that if DNA sequences could be used to produce evolutionary trees which match those based upon morphological or anatomical characteristics, This would furnish the best available single proof of the reality of macroevolution. So I did not come up with this test. I'll just give two references showing that trees of life based on bones versus trees of life based on genetics contradict each other. This is the first reference. Incongruence between phylogenies derived from morphological versus molecular analyses and between trees based on different subsets of molecular sequences has become pervasive as datasets have expanded rapidly in both characters and species. This is the first reference. This is another reference. This is basically I'm giving reference of an article in Nature. Because of such, this is a very prestigious magazine, journal. Sorry, not magazine. Because of such conflicts, a major review article in Nature reported disparities between molecular and morphological trees lead to evolution wars. What does this mean? Because evolutionary trees constructed by studying biological molecules often don't resemble those drawn up from morphology. So I think this is pretty strong evidence for universal common ancestry being false. Now keep something in mind. I did not come up with a criteria myself here. I used the criteria that evolutionary biologists themselves came up with, and that shows that that universal common ancestry cannot be true. Inshallah, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Inshallah, I'll keep refuting these clowns. If you like this video, please watch and share it, and like it. Till next time, Assalamu alaikum.